Hey folks, I'm David from SundaySounds.com, and I want to thank you for purchasing Sunday keys for Ableton Live. We appreciate the support, and I'm really excited to share with you how you can get this template up and running, opened up in your version of Ableton, and you'll be playing keys in no time. So check out this video, where I'm going to talk about the preference settings, explain how you can get your hardware connected, and be ready to go. So if you haven't already, you're going to want to unzip your download file, whether you're on Mac or Windows. I'm on a Mac today, but these steps are going to be relevant to you regardless of if you're a Mac or Windows user. Your download is going to be the same, and it's going to be a single zip file named something like this, Sunday Keys for Ableton. So it's in my Downloads folder right now. It may be somewhere else on your computer if you have a different default destination for downloads. Go ahead and double-click on that zip folder to open it. It's going to open up like this, and you'll see there's a folder now called Sunday Keys for Ableton, and then there's several things within this folder. Now, I'm assuming that you've already most likely gotten this far and actually opened up this Ableton set file, and that's how you got to this video. But you may have followed the link in the email that we sent you to get to this video as well. So if you haven't already, just unzip your folder, and then you have the Sunday Keys folder here with several folders within it. Now, it doesn't matter where this goes on your computer as long as you know where it is, and you don't want to separate out these folders that are included within it. So you just want to click and drag or copy and paste this Sunday Keys for Ableton folder to wherever it makes sense for you on your computer. So if you're on Mac or Windows, doesn't matter. You can place it on your desktop, you can place it in your Documents folders. On Mac, I'm going to just place mine here within my Music folder. So now I can go to Music, and it's just right there, ready to go, Sunday Keys for Ableton. Now you've got a few different folders in here. Most of these are Ableton reference folders, and you don't need to worry about them. We'll talk about a couple other folders that are in here later on in the videos on the video resource page. But for now, you're just going to open up this Sunday Keys for Ableton.als. This is an Ableton Live set file. If you haven't already done that, just double click. Now, Sunday Keys for Ableton is compatible with Ableton 9 Standard and Suite, and then also Ableton 10 Standard and Suite. And if you have both on your computer, then it will probably open up in 10 by default. But if you'd like to open it up in 9 instead, you can just right-click on the folder and choose Open with Ableton Live 9. That process is going to be similar on Windows as well. So I'm going to go down here to Ableton. Now I have Ableton 10 Suite open, but like I said, it does not matter if you have Ableton 9 Standard or higher, then you're going to be able to fully enjoy all of the features of the Sunday Keys template. All right, so I've got things open here now, and you'll see over on the right side, if this is your first time opening up this set, you're going to see a welcome message here, and you'll see this every time you open the template up. You can just exit out of it if you like, but it's helpful because you can find a quick link to the different video tutorials that we have available that will explain how you can get the most out of your purchase. Really quickly, before we go any further, also note the link over here to join the Sunday Keys for Ableton community on Facebook. This is a community of folks who are using this Sunday Keys template in Ableton Live. You can be inspired by how other people are using it, get quick answers to troubleshooting questions, and there's going to be lots of great content over in that community. So if you haven't already, go ahead and click that link and then answer the questions just to let us know that you do indeed own the template, and then we'll let you into the group, usually within about 24 to 48 hours, Monday through Friday. If you do exit out of this help window over on the right and you'd like to get back to it, just go up to View here in Ableton Live and click Help View, and then it'll pop right back up. If you go somewhere else in Help, if a lesson opens up or something, if you go here to Home, you can just hit this back arrow, and then you'll end up back at the Sunday Keys Help page. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to Preferences within Ableton, and we're going to tell Ableton what audio equipment and MIDI equipment to listen to. Now, the menu here is a little bit different on Mac versus Windows. So on a Mac, you're going to go to Live and click on Preferences. And then on Windows, you're going to go to Options and then scroll down to Preferences there. But either way, it's the same once you get to Preferences. Now, we'll start up here with Look and Feel. You may notice that my Ableton screen looks a little bit larger, and that's because I like to zoom the display a little bit. So if you set it to 100, it looks like this, and as you can see in the basic template, we've got a lot of extra space here, and things are a little bit small, depending on the size of your screen, depending on other tracks that you may add into your template. You may like to adjust the display zoom. So I like to set mine to 120 or so, and I found that that gives me plenty of space for all of the main tracks that are included with Sunday keys, and I'm able to see these bottom areas here, all of these control macros really nicely as well. In Ableton Live 10, here you can also change themes if you'd like. Find the one that works best for you. And you also have the option to choose different skins in Ableton Live 9. And those are basically the same as the theme here in 10. You've just got more options in Ableton Live 9. And then you can also adjust the brightness here, which has a really drastic effect on the look of the template overall. I personally like to leave the brightness at 200%, and then I favor this default mid-light setting. But you can find one that works best for you, and you may find, depending on your different performance scenarios, that you might like a brighter screen or a darker screen. So you can definitely adjust those things here. This is all within the Look and Feel tab here in Preferences. All right, next we're going to go to Audio Preferences. And this is where you're going to be able to choose your audio output devices. This is what's going to send audio out of your computer, either to a pair of headphones, if you're working on this at home, to your studio monitors, or if you're using this for live performance, to your soundboard. So I recommend using an audio interface that connects to your computer over USB or FireWire. We've got a lot of recommendations for audio interfaces on our website at sundaysounds.com in the Gear Finder tool, so you can check out the audio interfaces there in a lot of different price ranges. And then just check out the user manual for the audio interface that you have to see if there's anything special you need to do. Some audio interfaces require that you download a driver onto your computer. Most are going to be plug and play. But when you've got your audio interface connected, you're going to go to Audio Output Device here and just select your audio output. So the name of your interface will show up here. My interface is a Big Knob Studio, so you can see I've got that designated as the output device. If I wanted to use the headphone jack on my computer, I could choose built-in output. Now I will say for Windows users, you have the option to load third-party audio drivers onto your Windows computer that can process the audio instead of the built-in output and still send audio out of your headphone jack. There's a lot of information about how to do that in the Ableton Live Using community online, so you might check out the Ableton website or some Ableton forums to see if people have recommendations for the audio drivers that you might like to use in place of the stock Windows audio driver, because you may be able to get increased response time and decreased latency If you use an audio interface, then it's going to be doing the audio processing for you, and that's something that you wouldn't necessarily need to worry about. Now I've got my audio input set to none. If you wanted to connect the actual audio of a keyboard or a synthesizer into Ableton, then you could choose your interface here as well, and then you'd be able to route the audio in from a Nord or from an analog synth or whatever. But if you don't need an audio input, I just like to leave that at no device. Your sample rate right here, 44.1 is generally where I stick. You have the option of much higher sample rates, but for live performance, generally there's not a big uptick in quality that's going to be noticeable to the average person, but you are going to notice increased CPU strain, so I like to keep this at 44.1. For your buffer size here, depending on the audio driver that you have on Windows, you may or may not be able to adjust your buffer size. Here on Mac, you're able to adjust it from the drop-down. I've got mine set to 512, which gives me about 13 milliseconds of output latency latency, which is really low latency see. That means when I play a note, I'm going to hear it 13 milliseconds later, which is a really, really short delay, and that's very usable for me. If you have lower specs on your computer, whether Mac or Windows, sometimes increasing your buffer size can decrease your CPU usage and put less strain on your computer, but it can also increase the latency, the lag between playing a note and hearing it. So you have to find that happy medium between what feels good and what's going to make sure that your rig is solid for performance and isn't going to push your computer too hard. 512 here is working well for me. I have 16 gigs of RAM, and this is a pretty new Mac so you'll have to just weigh your options here and try different sample rates. I could probably go down to 256 without issue, and I would have even lower latency, but the threshold of perception for most humans is about 10 milliseconds. You can see when I go down to 256 here, my latency drops down to 8 milliseconds, and I'm not even going to appreciate really those last 2 milliseconds. So I like going at 512, put a little less strain on my computer, make sure that everything's going to be rock solid for me. And then driver error compensation, you don't need to worry about that. In the majority of use cases, you can just leave that at 0. All right, next we're going to go down here to link and MIDI. We're not going to worry about link for now, and we're not going to worry about MIDI for now. All we're going to be talking about today is MIDI ports. Now down here in MIDI ports, this represents all of the MIDI equipment, both digital hardware and software MIDI ports that Ableton has detected on your computer. So any MIDI controller that you want to be able to control your tracks, so you want to be able to play sound via your keyboard, then you want to make sure that track is turned on for the input. So I have my MIDI keyboard, the KeyStation 88, connected, and I have track turned on for both ports. So if I plug it into either of these USB ports on my computer, then it's going to be able to control the track. That means my sustain pedal is going to work, it's going to be sent through to these tracks, and my keyboard MIDI data is going to be sent through to these tracks. If I wanted to be able to MIDI map something like the mod wheel on my computer using the MIDI button over here, which we talk about later on in the video, the videos here on the video resource page, then I'd also need to turn on remote for these keyboards. But I don't want to be able to use my mod wheel for that, and I want to make sure that it doesn't interfere with other MIDI mappings I've got going on. So I'm going to leave this off, but if you wanted to be able to MIDI map your mod wheel or a fader or knob on your MIDI controller, then you'd want to make sure that remote was turned on here as well. Now, the other MIDI device that I have connected that I'd like to use is the Korg Nano Control 2. Sunday Keys for Ableton is pre-mapped to the Korg Nano Control 2, and it's a really great way to interact with this template. You get a lot of hands-on control. The Nano Control 2 is really inexpensive, it's lightweight, it's portable, and it'll fit on top of most any MIDI keyboard, and it's a great way to add some really nice hands-on control to your Ableton setup. Plus, when you head over to our website, you can see that we have a custom skin overlay for the Nano Control 2 that's color-coded and designed specifically for Sunday Keys. I'll put an image up of it on the screen here so you can see you've got 2 orange rows, 2 green rows, 2 blue rows, and 2 purple rows, and those directly correlate with the different tracks you have here in Ableton. So the faders on there will control volume for each track, and the knobs will control a low pass filter to make things darker or brighter. And then you can actually use the buttons to move between clips here and choose different presets on the fly. So the Nano Control 2 is a great way to interact with Sunday Keys for Ableton, and you get even more ease of use, especially if you have volunteers on your worship team, or if you don't have a lot of time to get comfortable. The overlay makes a really great visual companion that makes it really intuitive to interact with the template in live performance. So I don't want to send MIDI data from the Nano Control 2 to my tracks. It's not going to be sending any notes or sustain pedal data or anything like that. So I'm going to leave track off here. But I do want to be able to MIDI map, connect the hardware directly to a control here in Ableton. So I'm going to make sure that remote is turned on. So if you want to be able to MIDI map something, learn it so that when you move a physical control, it's going to interact with something in the template, then you want the remote button to be turned on for that hardware. And then if you want to pass MIDI data through to the tracks to actually play notes or to sustain notes or modulate notes, then you want to make sure that track is turned on for your keyboard. So that's all that we're going to do in preferences. And I'm going to close that out. And now that we've done those two things, we're ready to play. All right, so now that we've got everything connected, we've got our audio equipment ready to go, we've got our MIDI hardware connected in Ableton Preferences, then we're going to be ready to start playing. So we're going to end this video here, and then we're going to start with an overview of the template and how it works in the next video on the video resource page. So we'll see you there.